Good morning. Om Santi. Ah, hello, friends. I hope you've gotten up well and brightly this morning. Maybe, I'm sure some of you have. Some have probably gotten up, dully and reluctantly. Maybe you've gotten up after a good night's sleep. Maybe you've gotten up after a rough night's sleep. Life is like that. I was just reflecting this morning, that you only have to spend a few minutes, really, just rather quietly and directly. And all the truths of the Dharma are there. Just spend a few moments with yourself. Spend a few moments in meditation. Spend a few moments, not even necessarily in meditation, but just being sort of quiet enough and still enough to really sense, feel, make room for what's going on. And what will you notice? You'll notice that, firstly, nothing in your experience stays the same. Right? You'll just notice the chuntering of thoughts and the fizzing of body and the movement of breath and the changing of the soundscape or the visual scape. If you're really paying attention, you can't help but notice very quickly that nothing stays the same. And then you hang in there, you hang in there for a few minutes and you'll notice, nothing's very comfortable, right, for long. You think of what we arrange to get comfortable. What do you do to be comfortable? Maybe we watch a movie to be comfortable. We like the movie or we don't, but even if it's a very nice movie in a very comfortable chair, within those couple of hours of the movie, some of these little impulses of things that aren't quite right. Oh, I'd like a bit of this and I'd like a bit of that. Maybe you have one of those enormous buckets of popcorn so that every time that impulse, the impulse of dissatisfaction arises, you shove a few more popcorns in your mouth as if that's what you're looking for. Right? And, nothing against movies or popcorn. I like both. But it's just that spend a few minutes, really, honestly, and you'll notice, firstly, nothing stays the same for very long. In fact, for no time at all. And secondly, you'll notice nothing's perfectly comfortable for very long at all. At all. What do you think is the longest period of perfect comfort that you've had? Extremely brief. And if you just keep paying attention for those few minutes, you'll notice, I can't help but notice that most of it's just out of your control. Right? All that's going on in your experience, whether inner or outer, as we explored yesterday, whatever's going on, it's not happening because of you. Right? The sights are just appearing, sounds are just appearing, thoughts are just appearing, breath is just happening, heart is just pumping. Yeah. And of course, those are what the Buddha calls the three characteristics. These central features that we're invited to really notice the truthfulness of those. Sometimes I call them often the three imps. Maybe some of you have heard me refer to them before. The imps, the fact that things are impermanent, imperfect, and impersonal. Right? It doesn't last very long. It's not comfortable for very long, and it's not about me. And Buddha points to the liberation within really seeing the truth of those. And the reason I mention them now in the context of meditation is because how easily we can sit and think there's something wrong with my meditation because I'm not comfortable, right? Or because I can't get steady, or because I'm doing it wrong. In other words, that thought, I can't get steady, is we're not noticing the fact that everything's changing. Steadiness doesn't exist in a fundamental way. And then I can't get comfortable, or the meditation isn't comfortable. But yeah, that's what your practice is showing you. Nothing's comfortable for very long. And then the sense that I can't get it right. It's like, hey, it's not about getting it right. It's not about you. It's about giving yourself to these imps, giving yourself to the fact that, oh, things are impermanent. So it's like it's like witnessing the change, allowing the change, seeing how can I be more fluid with the changing nature of things. And then noticing the discomfort, like, oh yeah, it's like this, you know. There ain't no perfect posture. There ain't no perfect body. There ain't no perfect condition. And it's like, there's something, ironically and counterintuitively, that the more we're able to really take the imperfection of everything and the discomfort of everything, the more we're able to just take that in and acknowledge that it's like that, the more something in us both softens and yields and opens. And amidst everything being, not very comfortable and largely imperfect, there's a kind of exquisiteness. That we find that there's a great deal of beauty, there's a great deal of harmony, there's a great deal of majesty, we could say, to the way this uncomfortable and imperfect realm unfolds. So that, like I say, that's counterintuitive. We're encouraged by the culture in general to kind of strive for comfort and perfection. The Dharma says, no way. Fuck comfort and perfection. That's a futile pursuit. So of course we like it. We like comfort. We like convenience. We like things to go our way. And so and like we were saying at some point earlier this week, so there's a certain inevitable pursuit of that. Inevitably. It's not to shame oneself or to shame somebody else for the pursuit of comfort. I like to be comfortable. But what's the underlying assumption? How can we go through this impish life? Impermanent, imperfect, impersonal, and actually meet it on those terms. So that then when the inevitable discomforts and inconveniences come, when the inevitable insults and humiliations come, whether that's actually somebody insulting or humiliating us, if it's just, the way life insults us by kind of making a mockery out of our wishes and preferences and views and indignations. When life keeps showing us, in other words, that, it's not here, it's not all about me, then how do you meet that? Can you let your heart be tenderized by that? So I just wanted to point to the availability of these central insights. We often think something else has got to happen, like I've got to be able to be perfectly with my breath or something. I've got to get into very concentrated, or I've got to get very still, or I've got to get very comfortable. But no, you've just got the opportunity, like in this half an hour that we're sitting together, got the opportunity many, many times, again and again, just to be exposed to these truths. Sabbe Sankara Anicca, everything is changing. Sabbe Sankara Dukkha. Experience is imperfect. Sabbe Dhamma Anatta. It's not all about you. It's imperfect. It's impersonal. The invitation. So in those three things, the invitation to put down the assumption of continuity, so as to allow the fluidity, but to put down the expectation of comfort, of perfection, of things being as I want them, and to allow for the kind of the glorious imperfection, the just like thisness, and most essentially and most subtly maybe to put down the conceit that I'm in charge of it all, that it's all happening to me and for me and because of me, because it isn't. Sorry, but you're not that special and not that powerful. And maybe it would be a relief to relinquish our misappropriated specialness and our misappropriated importance. Maybe it would be a relief to just to be here in a certain harmony with the impish nature and qualities of life. That's the invitation. That's the practice. So please take your seat for meditation. All right, posture. Don't take it for granted and really feel your way in. If you don't feel very expansive or embodied this morning, you might take a really deep breath or two. Slow, like a slow, deep in-breath, filling your lower belly and feeling that expansiveness kind of rise up through your diaphragm and chest. And then luxuriate in the out-breath and its release. And just sense the field of your attention. Way like we explored yesterday, you can't really say exactly where attention is, other than it's here. It's here. So just letting yourself really feel the here-ness of your attention, the aliveness of your awareness. And seeing if you can invite your attention to settle, to really come in and down. In and down. Down, down. Down into the feeling in your legs and feet and the earth beneath. Feeling of contact, feeling of heaviness, density. Letting your attention soak into this feeling of contact. Of anchoring. The aliveness of sensation down in your butt and your legs. And sensation we can't say if it's produced by body or by earth or by both. But just in the concomitance of factors and amidst all the causes and conditions, here's this sensation. Here's this aliveness. And as you feel the waves of breath gently moving, naturally moving through your torso, just let your awareness, let your attention sort of fill out a little bit more. So you expand from legs and butt up into your pelvic floor and your belly and your diaphragm. And letting that movement of your awareness be led by the breath. So each in-breath just can expand your sense of embodied presence a little more. And with each out-breath, you can relax and settle into being here a little more. And as you practice, as you sit and sense and breathe, see if you can do so while really allowing for the flickering, fleeting, fluid nature of experience, where everything's just flowing, streaming through awareness. Everything is just vibration, movement. And letting it be such. Grounded in the intimacy of bodily sensation and vibration. And also letting your attention permeate this whole field of vibration and movement. This field in which breath and body and sound and thought are all just flickering and flowing. Letting your meditation be one of becoming this flow. I don't know if you can hear it, but there's a construction crew outside my window who are very helpfully digging up the road, reminding us that roads that look so solid, roads that might feel so solid are also just, vibration, sensation, sound of the drill, breaking up of the road, vibration literally coming through the floor. Everything's movement. Everything is change. Everything is dynamic. Just keep on entering into this flow of changing breath, dancing sensations, passing sounds, flickering thoughts. Just having the intention to not get caught up in it all, but just to allow it all to move. And then when you find you have gotten caught up, your attention has fixated on something, just release it. Release it as if it was a bird you'd trapped in your hands. You just open your hands. Just soften your attention. Just let everything have its free expression. This flow, this constant dynamism, this irrepressible aliveness of everything. It's unperfectible. It's incontrollable. So give up. Give up attempting to control, manage, organize. Give up standing apart from the life that's flowing through you. It's expressing itself as you. Here it is. Unfiltered life, constantly expressing its impishness. Impermanent, fluid, changing, streaming through awareness. Imperfect, frequently uncomfortable, refusing to conform to one's wishes and preferences. Impersonal, happening regardless of our attempts to control and own and manipulate experience. Here it is, the invitation of our practice. To return to life, to offer up to life our control, our resistance, our preferences, our contractions. What would it be like just right now to offer everything up? To stop trying to get it right. To be here very simply, naturally, as in the midst of and as this changing nature. May we all get with the program. Allow ourselves to be taught by and to learn from life's impishness. To dare to keep dropping, reaching and resisting. To nourish ourselves with the taste of the immediate, the taste of life's fluidity, life's exuberance, life's irrepressibility. Maybe you'll see and know the way to pass freely amidst life's impermanence and imperfections and impersonal appearances. All right. That was meditation. Little time for questions. Anything that seems like it might be helpful to discuss or explore or ask about. Got about 15 minutes for that. And then just before we get into the questions, if you do write a question, like Chris has just done, if you write a question in caps at the beginning, then I can recognize the questions amidst the chat. Just the brief daily mention of Dana. George will magically look at that for timing. George just made the link appear. Thank you, George. And it's that sense of mutuality that I've been pointing to this week. Try to support you the best we can. We invite you to support us the best we can. And, trust in the goodness of things that works out. Sometimes it works a little better than others, but that's the nature of things being impermanent and imperfect, etc. So anyway, if you appreciate what's happening here, if you're able to offer support to me and to Sangha Live and to everybody else that therefore can benefit from coming here, then thank you. And whatever amount you might give, whether you feel however much you give or however little you give, my usual request I often make, please connect to the goodness of the offering. The heart that's in it, the heart of making that gesture, making that offering, and the goodness of the way it's a very real and important support. That is, your dana is exactly what keeps this show on the road. So, thank you. All right. Chris says, I've often wondered about the language difference, re the three characteristics, Sankara for the first two and Dhamma for anatta, as in how this relates to daily life or practice in a meaningful rather than academic way. I assume the words were chosen with care and purpose. Yeah. So Sankara means, actually, I think the best translation, it's not the most common one, but the one I usually think of myself for Sankara is habit. Right? Literally, it more means construct. It's usually translated as, what's Sankara translated as? Compounded things. Compound, construct. But when we look, mostly Sankaras are used to look at mental constructs. In other words, habits. Right. So it's referring to all Sankara. Anything, in other words, anything that's put together will come apart. Right? Anything that's compounded, all constructs, sabbe Sankara anicca, all constructs are impermanent. Right? Sabbe Sankara dukkha. All constructs are imperfect because they're constructs, right? Their nature, you can't find or rely on perfection in that sense. So those first two are talking about the nature of everything, but particularly the nature of experience, and really as an invitation to attend to all that we construct, right? The sankhara, mental formations is another way it's translated in terms of the four foundations, for example. So notice all the constructs that we make up in our experience, and the invitation is to attend to these by seeing their anicca and their dukkha qualities, right? As a way, like we were saying in the meditation, to put down the unrealistic and unhelpful expectation of things being permanent and comfortable, right? And then you can flow much more freely with that. Then the language changes, sabbe dhamma anatta, because the anatta, the insubstantial quality that's being referred to, it belongs not just to constructs, but to all phenomena, right? All dhamma. Dhamma in this sense means just all phenomena, all conditions, right? So that's the distinction, because we could say, even though all sankhara are anicca and dukkha, not all dhammas are anicca and dukkha, because there's pointing to that the dhammakaya, the ultimate dhamma, right? That is not, that is unchanging, because there is the unconditioned, right? And that which is not sankhara. So there's that dhamma which is unconditioned, the unchanging, right? Everything's changing, everything's changing, everything's changing. All sankharas, all constructs are impermanent. What's not changing? What's not changing? Right? There's a kind of fundamental ground, the fundamental here-ness in which all the change is happening. That fundamental ground, the primordial ground, it's sometimes called Rigpa, primordial awareness, whatever you want to call it, here-ness, loose term, but the fundamental context in which all of the change is happening, that itself is unchanging. Hence, not making all dhamma anicca and dukkha. Right? All sankhara are anicca and dukkha. All dhamma are anatta. In other words, you can't reify. So even that fundamental here-ness, that's why I don't like to use the words fundamental ground or primordial ground or anything with a noun in it, because it tends to make it into atta, right? If you use a noun rather than anatta, insubstantial, not self, another way that's translated. Whereas here-ness feels like a kind of, that here-ness is tangible in some ways, but it's not a thing. It's not a place. It's not a location. It's not a state. So if that sounds a little arcane or complex for some, please feel free to leave it alone. But if you're into the arcane stuff, or for Chris, given the way you asked the question, I'm assuming a familiarity with that stuff. So in terms of just how it relates to daily life and practice in a meaningful way, it's more contemplative. You don't really need to worry moment to moment about the distinction between sankhara and dhamma in that sense. But what you can do in a very meaningful way, which is just what we've been saying this morning, right, is keep noticing where you're making the nicca out of what is anicca. Whereas you're trying to make something sukha when it's dukkha. Right? And when you've taken something to be atta, when it's anatta. And then there's the opportunity for the recognizing and the relinquishing, right? The giving it back. All right. Kevin says, can you speak of the pros and cons of labeling thoughts? Yes. So the pros, the advantage of labeling thoughts, is that it can help us to disengage from the content, right? So I'm just busy, and I go, just planning thought, and put it down. It's just a planning thought. Yeah, but what about that? When I'm going to go there and planning, just like calling it planning does two things. One, it builds some familiarity with the habits of mind. Right? Those are the kind of thoughts that I get into a lot. Planning, that comes up rather a lot for me. Oh, I tend towards a planning mind. That's the first thing it does, helps you recognize the type of mind activity. And then it also helps you just unhook from it, because you're just seeing it as a planning thought rather than being wrapped up in the detail and the drama of it. So that's basically the advantage. Helping to label helps to recognize and disengage. The con, if you like, the disadvantage is that it's still more mental activity, right? The labeling itself is a mental activity. So that's okay, but at some point, when you feel like there's enough steadiness, enough clarity, enough capacity to recognize and drop the thought, then drop the labeling as well. And the only thing is, you might find, because you've got the habit of that labeling, that it goes on for a while. That's okay. You don't need to stop it, but you can just stop doing it intentionally. And so it fades. And then there can be a much more sort of, I would say, a more frictionless process with recognizing and releasing thoughts, where it's just being done by clarity and wisdom rather than that being done by a sort of backup layer of conceptualization called labeling. Again, that might not be relevant to everybody here if you haven't practiced in that way. I don't use labeling in teaching about it, but just acknowledging that it can be helpful. And like any technique, really, it's got its way of being helpful, and it also, at some point, you encounter its limitations. All right. Adina says, I have some binders from the late 70s, from the 70s and 80s, with financial details about my father's death. It's quite messy. The other night during a Krishna Das concert, it came to me to burn it all. Then there came doubt that I'm trying to skip over rather than integrate, but I feel that the burning could somehow transform these old energies into something else. Maybe it's a too un-Buddhist view. Interesting. It's a little outside my scope. I don't know. Firstly, I don't know what the papers are, whether there would be any need to keep them for some kind of legal process, etc. Adina, we talked about ritual early on this week, and burning the old. That's a helpful ritual, right? It's used a lot. It's used a lot, but of course, it's not about just the act of burning the papers. It's partly about that, because you burn them and then they're not there anymore. So every time your mind goes there, you have that thing, oh, I've put that behind me. I've burned that. That's done, right? Of course, but the burning doesn't mean it's done. So you have to invest it. We talked about repetition. We talked about rituals having these three elements: repetition, connection, and symbolism. Right? So you have to kind of invest in that. Invest in the fact that, oh, this is burning. This is what people have done throughout the ages. That's the repetition part, right? That you're repeating an act that's meaningful, right? And then the connection, just to feel the connection, really feel the connection with your father and anybody else that's involved in that, right? And you reflect a little why he kept those papers, whatever it is that's messy or dark or dirty, the deceit, etc., right? So that you actually, there's a digestive process in that for you. And then you connect with the symbolism of the burning. And I would suggest, given that there's a lot left over from you to do with the messiness and the deceit, etc., that before you burn them, you sit with them for a while. So you might put those papers on your shrine, in front of where you meditate, for example, and you look at them every time when you sit and meditate, or after meditation, you look at them. And when you look at them, you give real care and attention to the feelings that come up, whatever they are, whether there's anger or resentment or confusion or hurt or whatever's related to the story of that. So you actually digest it. And maybe you have a date for burning them that's in the future. Maybe on the anniversary of your father's death, or I don't know, some significant moment. And until that anniversary comes by, you don't just go too quickly to the burning. You sit with these papers, and that means you sit with and digest your own emotional relationship to that stuff and all that went on with it. And then you burn them when you're ready, when you're actually done, rather than, as you mentioned, sort of trying to be preemptively done. Burn them, get it out of the way. Yes, burn them to get them out of the way, but First, do some inner burning up, right? Some inner digesting. The digestion is often referred to as the inner fire. And emotional digestion is like that, like digesting the emotions by feeling them, right? And noticing the tendency to bypass or ignore or suppress or excuse or justify or blame. And then you just keep coming back to feeling and allowing, going through the layers of hurt or anger or whatever else might be there. Yeah. And then when you feel like you've actually been through that process, then the burning might feel very appropriate and like an appropriate ritual act, which is the culmination of this other aspect of the ritual act of sitting with those papers. Yeah. Okay, good. Nice to see your response, Dina. Good. All right, friends. Well, that's interesting. Just what can emerge in a few minutes of questions and exploring together. So here's encouraging you to go through the day in the light of with the imps. Carry the imps around with you. Meet life through the lens of life's impishness, or at least through the wisdom lens that sees life's impishness. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I might have a late night tonight because I'm going to the tennis. I've got tickets for Philippe Chatrier, the main court at the French Open, which I really, some of you might know, but I really, really love tennis. And yes, so I'll be there tonight, rather looking forward to. And then I'll see you tomorrow morning. Thank you.